What's up, you guys, and welcome back to another video where today we're going to be talking about 5 ways to instantly boost your credit score. I'm talking about things you can do right now while watching this video, or right after if you prefer to do it then. Building and maintaining a good credit score is very important, just because pretty much anytime you go to buy a car or a house or anything like that, renting an apartment, they are going to run your credit score. And if you don't have enough, you're not going to qualify. So having a good credit score is very important, but building it and maintaining it is not exactly an easy thing sometimes, just because you would think some things increase your credit and they actually end up hurting your credit. So it's very important to kind of understand what factors are going to help your credit, what factors are going to hurt your credit. That's kind of the first step. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and take a look at what a credit score is and what the credit bureaus are. So there are 3 credit bureaus, or at least 3 main credit bureaus, and that's going to be Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And what these are, they're basically private companies that are highly regulated in their collection of data, but they actually collect data on pretty much anything and everything you do in regards to debt. So credit card information, any kind of collections, judgments, any kind of stuff like that. They collect all of that data and then they run it through a model. Now, the model they use can vary per bureau, and it also could be the same. So even if the model is the same, it could turn up different results because they have different information. And even if your information is the same, it could turn up different results because they use a different model based on that results. So the model most lenders are going to use is going to be the FICO score. So there's a lot of different versions, but there's also a Vantage score. But most places are going to use your FICO score, and that is the score that most of these credit bureaus are going to spit out. That being said, the specific model could be different. There's a FICO 7, a FICO 8, a FICO 9, there's a Vantage FICO mix, there's a Experian FICO V2 model. So there's a lot of different models that they could be using that could turn up different credit scores, and that's why you'll have a different credit score for each bureau. But the main data that they are going to be looking at is your payment history, your time in having credit. So I mean, if you've only had credit for 6 months, that's not a long period of time for them to look at. Whereas if you've had it for 20 years, then it's much more predictable as to what your future behavior will be. But they're going to be looking at time, they're going to be looking at debts owed, they're going to be looking at the percentage of credit utilization. So that's going to be, if in total you have, say, $100,000 in credit lines and you're using 99,000, they're going to look at that and say, hey, this person's using 99% of their total credit available. They're probably pushing themselves to the max, and they're not going to necessarily be the most qualified lender going forward. Compared to somebody who has $100,000 in available credit, who's only using $3,000, they've got a lot more breathing room. And that's somewhere where people actually get it really mixed up. A lot of people seem to think that you have to carry a balance on your credit card in order to build your credit. And the fact is, it'll actually hurt your credit if you carry a balance. You actually want to ideally have a $0 balance, but you really want to keep it under 30%. And if possible, keep it under 10%. So if your credit card, for example, has a $5,000 line on it, you're going to want to keep it under $500, but at most $1,500. But specifically in terms of what factors are going to affect the most, it's going to be 35% on your payment history. So, if you have never missed a payment, you have 100% on-time payments, that's going to be really good. That's going to be 35% of your score right there. The other 30% is going to be amounts owed / your credit utilization. So that's what we were just talking about, where if you have $5,000 in credit, you really want to keep it under 30%, which would be $1,500. But if at all possible, you'd want to keep it under $500. And one way to help this is to get more lines of credit. If you have a $3,000 line, the only way to keep it under 30% would be to use less than $900, or to keep it under 10%, you'd have to use less than $300. That is not easy to do necessarily. And one way you can actually do that is just get more credit. If instead of having $3,000, you had $20,000 and you use that same $300, you're only going to be using just over 1% of your credit utilization. So that's going to be one way to increase your credit. The other 15% is going to be your credit history length. So that's going to be the time horizon that we were talking about. If you have, 3 years of credit history, that's not that long. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not that long of a period. They can't accurately predict how you are going to be as a borrower going forward, compared to 20 years of history where, you know, somebody who has a great payment history over 20 years is not likely to all of a sudden not pay their bills. After that, you're gonna have your credit mix. So this is really gonna come down to what kind of credit lines you have. You know, if you have just credit cards, that's not gonna be that good. Ideally, you'd have a mortgage, maybe student loans, maybe credit cards on top of that. You know, you have a lot of different lines of credit. That being said, a lot of people are young. They don't need student loans, especially after our last video. They might not have any more. You know, they might not have a mortgage yet. Credit cards are going to be a big factor, and like I said, credit mix is only 10% of your FICO score, so it's not the biggest deal. The biggest deal is the things that you would think are the big deal in terms of payment history and your credit utilization. Those are going to be your big categories that you're going to want to focus on. And then outside of that, it's going to be new credit. If somebody is out there applying for 12 credit cards at one time, that looks like this person needs extra credit right now because they are in a pinch. Whereas if you are just applying for a couple credit cards every 5-6 years, that's not going to look as bad. The other thing I'll say is if you have, say, 10 years of credit history, but it's only on one line of credit, so you have one credit card and that's all you've got, if you go and open a new credit card tomorrow, your average age of credit history is going to drop to 5 years because now you have one line with 10 years and one line with no years. So you're actually going to split your credit in half. So it would be best if you are young to go ahead and get quite a few credit cards as quick as you can. Not a whole lot, but I mean, if you could get 2 or 3 right now, you know, if you go open a 4th line of credit, that only affects your credit by, you know, 25% compared to splitting it in half. So it would be good to go ahead and get a couple credit cards when you turn 18, 19, 20, you know, as soon as possible. You'll take the short-term hit, but it's likely you don't need your credit score just yet, you know? Whereas when you're 29, 30, 40, and you're looking to buy a house, you are gonna need your credit. So it would be best to get more than just one line when starting or quickly when starting. I personally, when I turned 18, got a credit card. I was only able to get one at the time, but I went ahead about 6 months in and I got another. About 6 months after that, I got another. And about 6 months after that, I got another. And another good point about this is within 2 years, all of your inquiries or applications for a credit card or credit line, they go away after 2 years. So I went ahead and got 2, 3, 4 cards within a pretty short amount of time, which, you know, hurt my credit score at the time. But if I go and get a new line of credit tomorrow, I have 5 lines of credit that I have, so it's not going to affect me as much. And those lines of credit are 3, 4, 5 years old now, whereas before I only might have had 6 months. Now I've got 5 years, and I don't actually have to worry about that new credit line affecting my credit as much. So the first way that you can actually go ahead and increase your credit score today is going to be paying any outstanding debts. If you have a credit card that you've gone ahead and used 50% of your utilization on, you can actually go ahead and pay that credit card down now, and your utilization, you know, if you paid it off completely, would drop to 0%, which is good. What you can also do going forward is pay your credit card before the statement comes in, so it actually isn't reported to the bureaus. That is one of the most effective ways for building your credit, is really just paying your credit card early. If it doesn't get reported to the bureaus, then your credit card utilization is always going to stay low and your credit score is going to continue to rise. The next way is going to be to pay down any outstanding debts. So a credit card is going to be a revolving line of credit, whereas an outstanding debt is going to be something that you were supposed to pay that you did not. Anything that could be in collections, for example, or anything that is due and payable and has not been paid yet, is going to be something that if you pay that down, you could see a major impact on your credit score for the positive. The third way to increase your credit score is kind of going to be the same thing, but it's really going to be checking your credit report. You can do this one time a year for free with all of the credit bureaus. You just have to make an account with them on their websites. A quick Google search will get you there, but I'm going to also leave the links in the description. But if you check your credit report, it's definitely possible you could find things on there that are not accurate. They may not be correct. and you could have those things removed. You can dispute them with the credit bureau. It's also possible you could find things that are in collections or a potential judgment against you. Things like that are going to not only hurt your credit score, but they're likely, if you are applying for a mortgage or an apartment to rent, they are likely going to affect you there as well. So it's going to be good to go ahead and clear those up. And it's possible sometimes those get lost, they get mixed up. You could have things on there that are not relevant to you, they are not you, but they are hurting your credit score. So disputing any fraudulent transactions on your credit report or any fraudulent events on your credit report is going to be the quickest way, if you do have any, to increase your credit score today. The next way, this is something you kind of have to, you can start today, but it's going to be an ongoing thing, and that is going to be to limit your future request for credit. So try to keep it under 2 to 3 per year. You don't want to go and request for 5 credit cards or 5 lines of credit within a year. That is not a good sign. You want to keep it to under 3 per year. And keep in mind they do drop off every 2 years. So ideally you never have more than 3 at any one time. So you could do 3 per year if the next year you didn't do any. But ideally you want to keep it to 1.5 per year. That way on a revolving basis you never have more than 3 requests or hard inquiries on your credit report. And the last way is going to be to use a service called Experian Boost. Some of the other credit bureaus have a similar named one. You can look on their websites and see what it is that they have, but now this is essentially a service Experian has where they will actually make you give them access to your bank account. So you have to essentially let them view your bank account, and they will count all positive payments to utility companies, streaming services, any kind of revolving subscription-based thing that's going to be a regular payment every month, so cell phone bills, anything like that. They will actually count the payments for you, and they actually don't count the negative payments against you. So they would add this into their model, which would help your credit for Experian. Now, each credit bureau may pull a different number, and this is where you might have a largely different number between TransUnion and Experian. This type of thing would only affect your Experian credit report because they're the only ones who have that data when they put it into that model. Whereas TransUnion, for example, might not have that data. So their model, they could be using the exact same model, and they're going to spit out completely different numbers because Experian has more data. You've given them more data. Most of the other credit bureaus have a service like this, and there are also some third-party services like this. So look into those, but Experian Boost is the main one that I know of and have heard of and done research on myself. But there are quite a few services like this out there that could help you build your credit starting today. So with that being said, that is going to be the end of the video. If you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you guys are new to the channel and are interested in personal finance or credit cards or anything like that, feel free to click that subscribe button. And with that being said, if you guys did get some value from this video, feel free to hit that like button. Helps the channel out a lot. And I will catch you guys next time. Peace.